I'm sitting here, so
Let's see,
Mary said that
1994, so
somebody
within 1990, within 30 years.
so she gets up and runs. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do my, what do you mean speaking?
It's really almost as long as this.
That's very
I work for him. I love him. You mean me?
Yeah.
Good choice.
I'll put it on bread.
Although I have narrowed it, I mean,
Yeah, that's a good product. We talked about like bringing a different one. Every time we say it, we try to make it better to myself. It's just a webcam.
They don't use limited speech. You just listen and set it on a table like they held it.
So on Cole's watch, Murphy, loaf of bread, and red Nice.
We have a monocle down there. He says, hey, can we go home? Dad said, another $5. Oh, he didn't make it.
all right, yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to our speaker series. Unfortunately, Sean, our leader, couldn't be here today, so he asked me to introduce our speaker. Just about, I think everybody in the room knows who he is, but he truly needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. For most of us of my generation, the assassination of JFK was one of, if not the most defining moments of our generation. And we're lucky today to have an expert in that area, Mike Salverback, who was, if I understand right, you were an adjunct faculty here at Kent. Oh, I thought Candy told me, well, we're going to have to change that, we're going to have to make you one.
Unless I was honorary, I don't know.
Long-term teacher at Beaver Local High School and now luckily retired. So let's welcome him and hopefully we'll learn something about the assassination of JFK.
All right, first of all, when I was asked to do this, I told them, I said, how many hours do I get? 6, 8, 10? Because they said, no, an hour. And I said, wow. I'm just going to give you an overview of things that happened, show you the day that it happened, and explain some things. And at the end, I want to set the scenario up of why it still continues to this day, why people believe that Kennedy was killed as a result of not just one lone crazy nut. There's so many things. So let me get on here with the show. This is President Kennedy the morning he is going to be killed. This is November 22nd, 1963. He had gone to Texas in 1963 for 3 reasons. One was it was a political campaign he was going to run for re-election as president 64, and he was getting an early campaign start, so this is a year before the election. The second reason is the party in Texas was split. A lot of Democrats weren't united with other Democrats, and Kennedy went there to draw them together because he knew that in 64 he would have to carry Texas in order to win the White House. The third reason he went there is for a fundraising for the Democratic Party. He would have luncheons and dinners, and people paid $100 a plate to come and listen to him give a little speech and eat their breakfast. Now, he was to make 5 stops in Texas. His first stop was San Antonio. He then went to Houston, Texas, and then the second day he flew into Fort Worth, Texas, and that's where he spent the night of the 21st. On the night of the 21st, the next morning, hey, not gonna work, buddy. So on the night of the 21st, Kennedy spent the night in Fort Worth, Texas, and that morning there were a whole bunch of people crowded outside the hotel where he spent the night, and it was raining out, and they were yelling his name and wanted him to come out and wanted him to, you know, shake hands with them. So Kennedy, being the politician, went out and they set up a little flatbed truck with him, and Kennedy gave a little, you know, off-the-cuff speech there with the governor of Texas, John Connally, and his vice president, Lyndon Johnson. Then Kennedy went out and shook some hands. Then they got on Air Force One and they flew into Dallas Love Field. This is them getting into the limousine in Fort Worth to go to Love Field in Dallas. It's probably about a 10-minute flight. Fort Worth and Dallas are only like 20 miles from each other. By the time the plane got up high enough, it was descending. And the crowds, they didn't expect big crowds, but when Kennedy got to the airport, he couldn't believe how many people had come to see him. The morning newspaper, Kennedy always read the LA Times, the New York Times. He also got the local papers where he was at. And that morning, when he was at Fort Worth, before they left to go to Dallas, he told his wife, Jackie, we're going into nut country today. And he showed her there was a full-page ad in the Dallas Morning News that said, wanted for treason, and had a picture of Kennedy and all of the things that he was wanted for treason. John F. Kennedy, you know, you got to understand the times that he was the president also. He wanted to end the Cold War. He was a president who was looking to work together with the Soviet Union, work together with Castro even in Cuba. And a lot of people believe that is one of the reasons why he was assassinated, was the top military men and top government men weren't ready to end this Cold War. They didn't trust the Soviets. And like Kennedy was hoping to work out relations with them. Okay? So here he is, him and his wife, greeting all the people. They went right up to there was a snow fence built. Kennedy went right up, shook the hands of anybody that was there. They all loved him and screamed, and they expected to have signs up that said, you know, go home, Kennedy. But there was only a few of those. Most of the crowd really enjoyed seeing him, especially Mrs. Kennedy. They then get into the presidential limousine at Love Field in Dallas, and they then take off from Love Field, and they're going to have a motorcade through the main streets of downtown Dallas. Okay? Now Love Field, the airport, is up here, and they're going to cross a whole bunch of streets and that, and then they're going to come down Main Street here in Dallas. Okay? And they're going to end in a little park area called Dealey Plaza, named after Richard Dealey, who started the Dallas Morning newspaper. And when they get down to the end of Main Street, they'll make a right here onto Houston Street, and then make a sharp left, go under here, then they're going to end up on this highway over here called the Stemmons Freeway, and that is where Kennedy is on his way to give a luncheon talk at the Dallas Trade Mart Center, where there's 1,000 people waiting for him to show up. Okay? The famous, I guess, places in Dealey Plaza that people are skeptical about as far as gunmen. The main one is, here's where Lee Harvey Oswald is. He's in that 6th floor window right there in the Texas School Book Depository. Back here is the famous Grassy Knoll area. The Grassy Knoll is where a lot of people believe to this day that a second gunman fired at the president. Okay? This is Kennedy's motorcade coming down Main Street of Dallas. This is getting near Dealey Plaza now. He had the motorcycle escort here, and then behind that is the Dallas County Sheriff's car, and then behind that is the president. And you can see the crowds. They were lined up 8, 9 deep on the sidewalk, just packed in like sardines to just see the president the whole motorcade route through Dallas. People were up in the windows of the buildings waving at him. Of course, with what happened to him, you know, security now with the Secret Service is a lot different. So here comes Kennedy's car right here, and behind him is the Secret Service follow-up car that has 2 agents on each side, Secret Service men riding. This guy right here is the famous Clint Hill, who's still alive, who's the one you'll see later, the only one that reacts to running up and trying to do something to protect the president. This is right before the limousine turns onto Houston Street. They're going to turn here now. Mrs. Kennedy had her pillbox hat on, her pink wool suit, and she looked happy. And at one point, the sun was so bright; it was a beautiful November day because they expected rain. And when they started to leave on Air Force One from Fort Worth, Kennedy ordered the bubble top on the limousine to be taken off. Now the bubble top wasn't bulletproof or anything, but it still would have helped, an assassin or assassins have a harder shot to get it. But they're going to drive now down Houston Street here. This is how they'll be sitting. What I want you to notice here is, here's the governor, John Connally. You can notice that there's only about 3 feet between him and the president. Him and his wife, Nellie, are sitting in these little seats that fold down in the middle of the car called jump seats, and the president and his wife are in the back seat. Agent Will Greer is the driver here, and Roy Kellerman's the other Secret Service agent. He's like on the walkie-talkie to make sure everything's going well. Okay? Here you get a better see how close the President Kennedy is to the governor. It is right here that you can see Mrs. Connally right here. She's turning and the president's looking at her. It is here that she says, because they're at the end of the motorcade route now, that she says to him, Mr. President, you can't say that Dallas doesn't love you. And Kennedy's last words that he ever spoke were something like, yeah, you're right, or yeah, I guess so. Those are this is where he'll speak his last words. He's probably right here, got 90 seconds to live. Here's Agent Hill, like I said, you'll see. He's in charge of Mrs. Kennedy. This agent's in charge of Mrs. Conlon. The other two are, first one's in charge of the president, the other one's in charge of the governor, if anything should happen. Here is, again, coming down Houston Street towards the book depository building, where Lee Harvey Oswald is supposedly sitting right in this window here with the boxes piled up, with his rifle resting, waiting to take a shot at Kennedy. Oswald is in this window right here, and you can't see him because he's behind the brick. But a man down here on the street corner who just came over to see, he was a construction worker, was working down the street here, came over, and before Kennedy got there, he noticed a rifle sticking up out of the window, and his name was Howard Brennan. And as soon as the assassination happens, he'll run and grab the first policeman and say, I saw a rifle right there in that window, and that's what draws the police to that building. Okay? They're now going to turn onto Elm Street here. This is a sharp left-hand turn right here in front of Elm. Okay, the president's car right here. Again, turning in front. Now everybody says, why didn't Oswald, which I don't understand either, Oswald had the perfect shot at Kennedy coming towards him to shoot him when he was coming down Houston Street. But he did not fire a shot then. He waited until Kennedy's car turned in front of the building he worked in and was driving away. Okay? Kennedy right here they're in front of the book depository building now. Kennedy's sitting there. Kennedy has probably about 15 seconds to live here. These are just pictures and frames of 8mm film that people were taking that day as the car went past. Okay? And here we are. This is probably 2 seconds before the first shot. All right, now, I'm going to get to the next picture. It's a color picture. All right, there's some important things here. Number one, there's a guy right here with an umbrella. It's a bright, beautiful, sunshiny day. For years and years and years, and some people still believe that he was the signal man of when the assassin saw the open umbrella, because right when Kennedy gets near, he starts lifting his umbrella up and down like he's pumping it. Even some people believed he was a Secret Service agent, had a gun and built into the umbrella, and he shot the president. And he was the shooter, There's all kinds of crazy stuff. He, though, is the only one, and you'll see a picture later, that when this is all over, him and this man right here will be the only two that don't react to the shooting. Everyone else is running, hitting the deck, going crazy, taking their kids, covering them. These two sit down on the curb and just watch what's going on like they knew what was going to happen. Standing right up here on this cement pillar here is a man named Abraham Zapruder. His film is the famous film of the assassination. He's the only one who captured the whole assassination on home movie that day. Everyone else stopped basically filming and things. He caught the whole thing, was probably 20 feet from the car the whole time. He kept his camera running. Behind the retaining wall right here is a man in assassination lore called the Black Dog Man, because it looks like a black dog sitting on the end of the wall. And after the assassination, he's no longer there. Okay? When Kennedy's car continues to go, this man, next to the umbrella man that I told you, puts his fist up in the air. Okay? Kennedy's car now is continuing down the street. The crowds have thinned out. There's hardly anybody even left to see him. This is right before the first shot. And when the first shot rang out, it missed Kennedy. It supposedly, Oswald, the shot hit the branch of the tree in front of the book depository, ricocheted off the tree, and landed across two medium strips on another street called Commerce Street, where it nicked the curb, and the lead bullet split, and the curb busted, and a man named James Tagg, who was coming up that Commerce Street walking because he wanted to see the president, he was cut in the face by a piece of bullet fragment or a piece of concrete. Okay? So this is right at when the first shot. Everyone thought it was motorcycle backfire. They didn't think it was a shot. They thought that, you know, all the motorcycles that are around, one of them backfired. And Governor Conley here, who's sitting in front of the president, recognized it right away, him being a hunter, as a rifle shot. The second shot occurs within 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds after the first. Kennedy, you can see here, this is his hand. You'll see later a better picture. The first shot missed, the second shot hit Kennedy, and I'll show you this in a picture in a minute, hit Kennedy in the back, above his, in his shoulder area, is supposedly exit out the front of his throat, goes from his throat, and then goes into Governor Conley, hits him in the back, fractures 2 ribs, collapses his right lung, comes out, shatters his right wrist, and the bullet embeds in his left thigh. Now, when this picture came out, people said, Oswald couldn't have shot the president. There he is, right there, standing in front of the book depository where he works, watching the motorcade. Well, when they looked at it, they questioned. This is a man that worked in the book depository. His name was Billy Lovelady. He kind of resembled Oswald. And they thought maybe that was, there's proof that Oswald didn't do it, but that's not it. Clint Hill, this is after the second shot right here. Okay, there's the agent's going to react. The motorcyclists are looking towards the car. Back behind Kennedy, or the Secret Service follow-up car, is the vice presidential limousine. Lyndon Johnson, his wife, Lyndon's over here, his wife, and Senator Ralph Yarborough did not like Lyndon Johnson, and Lyndon Johnson didn't like him, and Kennedy made them ride together because he said, we got to show unity. Now, if you notice the car behind that, that's the Secret Service car with agents with guns. You can see the back doors opening. An agent named Rufus Youngblood, who realizes something is happening. He's in charge of protecting the Vice President, Lyndon Johnson. The door is opening. He's going to come out and run and cover up Lyndon Johnson in the second car. This is from the home movie. Kennedy for a while was behind this freeway sign here. And when he comes out from behind the sign, when he went behind it, he was not hit. When he comes out, you can see his hands are now raised up to his throat, starting to come up. A bullet now has pierced President Kennedy and is supposed to come out his throat and enter the governor right here in his back. Okay? But you can see that the governor is not showing any reaction to being hit yet and is looking. Governor Conley said, when I heard the shot, I turned to my right to look back over my right shoulder to see the president. And then I was in the process of turning back to the left when the second shot went off. You can see that Kennedy has definitely been hit now. His arms are clear up to his throat. His wife is looking. But here's Governor Conley still not showing any reaction to being hit. His right hand that the bullet's going to go through is right there. There's his Stetson hat, his cowboy hat that he's holding in his right hand. Now this is what people really get. And people, we've had panels all across the country and people still discuss, this is called the single bullet theory or the magic bullet. That one shot could have pierced Kennedy and then done all the damage to the governor and come out in what they say is pristine condition. Now the thing here you got to remember is this bullet has already passed through John Kennedy. Now sure, it has probably slowed the speed down, the velocity a little bit, but the governor is showing no reaction, and a bullet has to have been in his back by now. Now you can see the governor's react. His right shoulder has been driven down, his cheeks are puffed. Okay? A man from East Liverpool that wrote a book called 6 Seconds in Dallas, Josiah Thompson, who grew up right up here on Park Boulevard going to Thompson Park. He is a private investigator still alive, he's 70-some years old. He wrote a book called 6 Seconds in Dallas, and this was his big thing of how the timing between the bullets hitting these two people just doesn't make sense. And he did this big book, and what ended up happening, it was published in 1967, and it's very rare that you can even find anymore, because supposedly they quit printing it on some order from somebody that this wasn't good for the people to read. These are drawings showing you what's going on in the film. Okay? Here's the guy with his raised fist. We'll get back to him here. Here's Kennedy. Here's the governor. Okay? Continuation. Now this is a diagram showing supposedly the bullet entered Kennedy's neck right there, went through his throat, exited out his throat, and then went into the governor. The big thing here, guys, is very simply Kennedy would have lived more than likely, 99%. That's the only wound he would have sustained. He might have had trouble speaking later, but this was a wound he could have survived. Okay? It's the last shot, the third shot, that's what's going to kill Kennedy, right there on the street. Now, you'll see this is a diagram that the Warren Commission, who's the investigative organization into President Kennedy's assassination, the Warren Commission is going to release no pictures, no autopsy pictures, nothing of President Kennedy. But you'll see that this bullet hole entrance wound in his back is going to move 6 inches down to here. And Gerald Ford, who was on the Warren Commission, actually admitted years later that yes, he had drawn the entrance wound down lower to line up with Oswald's window, and he did that himself. This is a diagram after the bullet exited President Kennedy's throat. It supposedly hit the governor right here in the back, collapsed his right lung, smashed his 5th and 6th rib, then went into his wrist, shattered his wrist, and then lodged in his left thigh. And this is the bullet that was found at the hospital when they take the president and the governor to Parkland Memorial Hospital. One of the stretchers that they took the men in on, this is the bullet that an orderly found as he moved the stretchers after they took him into a bullet fell off on the tile floor and picked it up and gave it to a Secret Service agent. And this is the bullet that they say did all those wounds to the president and the governor, smashed bones, ribs, went through Kennedy's throat, and came out looking like that. Okay? Now, the FBI did tests. The FBI did tests. They took the same ammunition Oswald had, 6.5 millimeter shells, lead bullets, and they did a series of tests. This is the bullet I just showed you that they found in the hospital that day when they took him to the hospital. This is a bullet, same ammunition, that was just fired into the ribs of a dead goat to simulate the bone, that bullet hit the bone. You can see how the nose of the bullet is flat. These are soft lead bullets. The nose of the bullet is flattened, where this is still cone shaped and pristine. And again, I can go into 2 hours on the tests they did with the bullets and the theories, but we don't have time for it. This is across the street, right before Kennedy is going to be shot and killed in the head. He's now, the governor will be pulled down into the back seat here by his wife. His wife, Nellie, will grab him and pull him down in the seat. And by doing that, she closed the wound in his chest. And that's what basically saved his life, because his right lung was sucking air and blood was squirting out. And when she bent him over and closed it, he was still able to be conscious and still knew what was going on, and then he passed out when they got to the hospital. Right across the street, directly across from the president, is Bill and Gail Newman. And they're 2 little boys that they brought down to see the president that day. Okay? They will give testimony 30 minutes after this happens that they believe the shot that killed the president came right from back over their shoulders here, which is where the picket fence on the grassy knoll is. This is right before Kennedy's head is going to explode. If you've seen the Zapruder film, you see the gap between the back seat here and Kennedy, how he's leaning forward, how he's over towards his wife. Okay? This is on the other side of the street. These 2 ladies here, this is Jean Hill and Jean Hill here, and Mary Moorman. Mary Moorman will take a famous Polaroid picture. She snaps her camera's lens exactly at the same time that Kennedy's head will explode. You can see Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent, is running up to the back of the presidential limousine now because he knows something's wrong. This is the headshot. This is when Kennedy, the bullet supposedly enters the back of his head, right here, and exits out the right front portion right above his right ear. Blood and brain tissue fly all over the place. 2 motorcycle policemen that were riding near the limousine actually were hit with blood and brain material from the president, and they thought that they were shot because their windshield on their motorcycles was covered. And Kennedy's sitting in the back seat, facing forward. The motorcycle guys are off to his left, right here by the car, just a little bit behind. It almost makes you think, well, when he was hit, you'll see in the film that his head goes backwards and to the left violently. And they said that Kennedy's brain had such a trauma that he had a neuromuscular reaction and his body just stiffened up, and that's just shot him that way. But the material, the brain and blood material, actually went towards the motorcyclist too, on the left side, not the right side. Usually, and again, Dr. Cyril Weck in Pittsburgh, who's the coroner of Allegheny County forever, I don't think he is now, he is a big, he has studied, he's a big ballistics and pathologist up there, and he's seen gunshot wounds, all that. He says, just by looking at the Zapruder film, you can tell that the laws of motion, physics, Newton, is a body, if you're hitting the back, you're going to be driven forward. Okay? You're hitting the side, which is where the grassy knoll was, you're driven back towards the bullet, left, backwards and to the left. Again, there's so many theories and stuff I could go into on that, even just on that. Clint Hill's now running up to the car. This is after the headshot. He's climbing on the back. Mrs. Kennedy had no recollection of what she was doing. She was just in a state of shock. Her husband's brains are all over her now. But according to Clint Hill, she is reaching for a piece of the president's skull that's laying on the back trunk, and when the car starts to accelerate, she would have rolled right out onto the street. So Clint Hill's going to be the one that gets up there and pushes her back into the back seat. And then he will get in the back seat with her, and they will rush off now to Parkland Memorial Hospital, which is about 5 minutes from here. That's Clint Hill in the back. The agent, the car behind with the Secret Service agents. Clint Hill saw the head wound on President Kennedy, and he's giving the thumbs down to the agents behind. He knows it's fatal. This is them now just speeding off to the hospital. Okay? Mrs. Kennedy pulled President Kennedy down into her lap now, and she actually, there was a part of his skull with flap hanging out that she closed up with her hand and tried to put it, I guess, his head back together. Here they are going under the railroad overpass here. You go under this, and then you make a right here on this ramp, and then it's on the Stemmons Freeway, where he was to go have a speech and lunch, and also where Parkland Hospital is. Now, there's a man standing right up here. His name's Sam Holland. He was a retired railroad worker, and he came down to watch the motorcade. Sam Holland will testify that when he heard the shots, his reaction was towards the picket fence on the grassy knoll, and he says he saw a puff of smoke come out from under the bushes and the foliage there behind that picket fence. When it's all over, he'll go run behind there. You'll see him here in a little bit. Car's now speeding off towards the hospital, and people are starting to react to the shooting. People are running up here towards the grassy knoll. Policeman is running up here because some people thought a shot came from up in here. So they're just running. Here's Bill and Gail Newman, are laying on top of their kids because they believe the shot came from up in here somewhere. Zapruder has now gotten down off the wall. That's his secretary that was there with him. Policemen are parking their motorcycles and going. Now, there'll be more pictures of right after the effects. The two guys I was telling you about, the umbrella guy and the guy raising his fist. They're sitting there, and then later, one will walk towards the underpass, the other will walk back up this way. In 1978, 76, 77, 78, the government reinvestigated Kennedy's assassination along with Martin Luther King, called the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And this man that had the umbrella supposedly came forth and said, I was the umbrella man. He confessed to it, and he testified in front of the House Select Committee in 1978. The House Select Committee on Assassinations was the second investigation, and it uncovered a whole bunch of more things, and it actually, their conclusion was that President Kennedy was probably, that's used the word they used, killed as the result of a conspiracy, meaning more than one man, Lee Harvey Oswald, had shot at the president. Okay? They sealed all their papers for 75 years after the commission was done, the committee. So it wasn't supposed to come out until like 2036, but then Bill Clinton, because all the people want the answers and think the government's hiding all this stuff, Bill Clinton put together the Assassinations Records Review Board in 1992, and they studied the classified documents and things that hadn't been released, and they started releasing some things, and they also said in 2017, next year, all the rest of the documents will be released. Now, will we find a smoking gun? Probably not. But will we find maybe some pieces of the puzzle to put together to answer some of the questions we don't know? Hopefully. Police officers, this is one of the men right here that said he felt he got hit because he had to park his motorcycle and he couldn't even really see to drive. He had to wipe his shields off and everything. Okay? There's the Newmans again laying down. This is the press bus that was in the motorcade route. This is the last vehicle that was in the motorcade route with President Kennedy. These are all the ABC, NBC, all these reporters that are following him on his tour of Texas. And here's where Sam Holland was standing on that, and Kennedy's car would have been coming right down here in the center lane. Okay? And when he was, like I said, here he is, he went over behind the picket fence where he saw the puff of smoke, and he found fresh footprints, and he found cigarette butts, like people were smoking there, like they were waiting for something. Okay? This is where they think another assassin might have been, right here. And this is the spot where Kennedy's head, if you go to Dallas now, there's a white X painted in the street, right here, right at the spot where the impact in his head was, okay, when he was killed. And this is showing you that if there was, I'm not saying there was, if there was another, you can see how he'd been hidden behind the picket fence with the rifle probably resting between the pickets, And I'll tell you more about this in a second. And then that's Kennedy. You see how he would have been hidden by things, the foliage, the trees, the stuff here. And this is from the fence where that guy was. Look at the shot he would have had. Resting his rifle here, right at the present, right through there. Okay? You can see why no one would have, unless you were behind the fence, which is another story. The first police officer, Gene Hill, the one that was down on the street, said, "Somebody's shooting behind the fence up there." And the first policeman that ran up there had his gun drawn, went behind the picket fence. He encountered a man behind there. He said, "Stop, who are you?" And the guy reached in his coat jacket pocket and he pulled out a Secret Service badge. He's some Secret Service agent. He went, "Oh, okay." And the policeman let him go and he walked off. While the policeman's checking the parking lot, there's a parking lot behind the picket fence. He's checking now, looking between the cars and everything. Okay? This guy walks off. When the policeman told his superior that day, he said, had to file a report what he did and everything. And the captains, they wanted to know where these guys were and what they were doing at the time of the assassination. And he told them about encountering the Secret Service agent behind the picket fence. So his captain called up the Dallas Secret Service office and wanted to know who the agent was that they had stationed back there, because they wanted to, see if he saw anything and talk to him. And the Dallas Secret Service agent said, "We had nobody stationed in there. All the Secret Service agents were in the motorcade and now in the hospital." So here's a guy 90 seconds after Kennedy's assassinated that has a Secret Service badge behind the picket fence on the grassy knoll where they think another shot came from. Sam Holland also let it be known that there was a parked car behind the picket fence that it looked like somebody had taken their feet and rubbed their feet mud on the bumper of a car. So what people have theorized was that there were two men back there, one pretending to be the agent, the other guy with the rifle, that this guy got into the trunk of a parked car with his gun, and that guy shut the trunk on him, and then pretended and walked away, and somebody came back later and they never checked the trunks of the cars that were parked back there. So that's what some people theorize, how, if there was a shooter, how he got away without detection. This is a FBI agent. They reenacted the assassination like a week later. And this is Oswald's rifle with a camera on top, on a tripod. And this agent they had a motorcade like Kennedy's car, and they had people sit in for him, and they're just filming it. And this is a shot Oswald would have had. Okay? Again, we don't have time to go into Oswald's Marine Corps experience and his shooting. This is from where Oswald shot. The first shot, they said, hit one of these tree branches, and that's why it missed and ricocheted away and hit the other guy, James Kennedy. Another quick, weird scenario. Kennedy's luncheon was at noon. It was supposed to be at noon. Kennedy's running late. By the time he crosses and passes in front of the book depository, it's 12:30. If Kennedy would have been on time, Oswald, who worked on this floor right here with 6 other guys, they all broke for lunch at like 5 minutes to noon. 3 of Oswald's co-workers said, "Let's go down and get our lunch in the 2nd floor lunchroom." That's where they had a refrigerator. "Go down and we'll come back up. Kennedy's due to come past her at any time." Well, they left and they said, "Hey, Lee, are you coming with us?" And he said, No, I'll be down in a minute. I got to finish this order, packing these books." He said, "Send me on the elevator back up, though. I'll be down in a minute." Well, that's the last time I saw him until he was arrested. Oswald then, supposedly, when the workers broke for lunch, built the sniper's nest. He piled up. People in the street saw boxes being moved in this window. Boxes were being stacked like this. Oswald will be on the other side of these boxes, behind his body hidden by that wall there, with his rifle laying on a box in front of this window here. Okay? Now, James Jarman, one of the co-workers, actually went down and got his lunch and came back up. It was 12:05. And he sat down right in the window here next to Oswald. I didn't see Oswald, didn't hear anything, didn't know anything, and all of a sudden, and he's sitting right there in that window. He ate a piece of chicken. He had a chicken breast. He ate that, put the bones in the bag, and he had a Dr. Pepper. It got to be 12:15. He said none of his coworkers were there, so he said, I'm going to go find. So he went down a floor, and here they were on the 5th floor, right below this floor, right underneath where Oswald's going to fire the shots. That's where he found him. So when the police interviewed him, they said, didn't you hear anything, see anything? You're right next to where Oswald shot the president. He said, I didn't see anybody. I didn't hear anything. So either Oswald was a mouse hiding there or somewhere else. Oswald sat on this box. Here's the empty shell casings. This is why the theory is 3 shots were fired at the president, not 4, like some people said they heard a 4th shot. And some people have said they heard 6 or 7. But Oswald's rifle was a bolt action where when he fired the trigger, the bullet, he had to work the bolt, pull it back, and it popped out the empty shell casing, and they fell here right in front of the window, 2 of them, and one of them went over here, up here. You can't see it because it's too light here. And that's where they found the spent shell casings right there. They found his rifle. This is an FBI agent, reenacting what Oswald would have did. He left his window after he saw that he hit Kennedy in the head, took his rifle, walked across the 6th floor to the staircase, hid the rifle. Here's how they found the rifle. That's the actual rifle that they took a picture of before they picked it up first, and then they put it back down to film because the police, hey, we didn't get a picture of that now. So they did that, and that's where then Oswald walks down 4 flights of stairs right here. And it's really eerie when you go there. That sign is still there. These boxes are still, it's just like you're going back to November 22nd, 63 here. Okay? Oswald then goes down 4 flights of stairs, and the first time that anybody sees him after the assassination, he's standing in the 2nd floor lunchroom, standing in front of the Coca-Cola machine, buying the Coke. Now, the first police officer, Joe Smith, that Howard Brennan said, I saw a rifle in that window up there, that attracts the police's attention to that building, ran up the front steps of the book depository. When you walk up the steps and open the doors, you're on the 2nd floor, and the lunchroom's right there to the right. And it was a glass door. And this policeman pulls his gun out and tells Oswald, stop, who are you? And the superintendent, the boss of the building, Roy Truly, comes out and says, that's Lee Oswald, he works here. And the officer says to Roy Truly, he says, where's the stairs? Where's the other? I got to get up to the 6th or 5th floor. They say that's where shots came from. So him and Truly take off. Oswald now walks, supposedly, right out the front steps of the book depository here, goes down the street, Elm Street here, all the way down here, and he gets on a bus. We know he got on a bus because we found the bus pass. He gets on the bus, and the bus starts to come this way. When traffic now, this is where Kennedy was just assassinated, right here, and all this traffic is stopped. It's all being closed off. So the bus is not moving. So Oswald gets off the bus, gets a bus transfer, and walks down this way to where the Greyhound bus terminal is right here, and there he flags a cab down. And the cab driver picks him up, and he gets in the cab, and he now goes to his apartment, which is like 2 miles from here, from where he worked, in a little section of Dallas called Oak Cliff. This is where Oswald lived. This is a rooming house. There are 19 single rooms in this little place here. Oswald had 1 room. It's just a 1 room. There's no kitchen. There's no sink. Everybody uses the same bathroom. This is where he was living, okay, at the time of the assassination. There was a cleaning lady in here named Erlane Roberts. All of a sudden, the front door, here's where the front door is right in here, all of a sudden the front door opens up. she's cleaning in the living room. This is where the TV, where everybody watched TV and stuff here in the front living room. And she's cleaning, and she says, she's got the TV on and she's hearing the reports, the president's been shot, and she sees Oswald come into the room, and she says, Mr. Lee, did you hear the president's been shot? Because Oswald rented this room under an alias. Oswald had two aliases, O.H. Lee and Alex J. Heidel, which again, there's a whole bunch of stuff to go into that, but I don't have time. Oswald goes back to his room, Mrs. Roberts said, and while he's back in his room, she hears a car horn out front go, beep, beep. And so she moves the curtains right here in this front window and looks out and sees a Dallas police car. And she said it was Dallas police car like 206. She says that the car sat there for like 30 seconds in front of the rooming house here on the street out here, Beckley Street, and then it drove off down towards downtown. Oswald then comes, she said, running out of his room back here in the hallway, runs out the front door, down the steps here, and is standing on the sidewalk looking up and down the street like he's looking for somebody. Oswald then starts walking up the street towards the commercial section of Oak Cliff in Dallas. Mrs. Roberts was asked about what she saw, what her account of Oswald was. What she said, he got a jacket, he didn't have a jacket on, he had a jacket when he left. Supposedly Oswald went back here, guys, and he had a pistol in his room concealed, and he picked up the pistol that he had. They asked Mrs. Roberts about the police car. They said, well, it was Dallas Police 207. This is all in the Warren Commission testimony in the volumes. And so they went and they said, okay, let's find out what police car was in the area at that time. But when they went to look, Dallas Police never ever had a police car number 206. Was this Oswald's getaway and he missed it? It's funny that down the road here there's a little airport. A plane took off with 3 other men and went to Mexico City right after the assassination. Was Oswald to be driven and taken out of the country? Oswald had visited Mexico City 2 months before the assassination. Again, there's so much. You get into this and it's amazing how many different angles and branches there are. So Oswald now takes off and he's walking up through Oak Cliff. People see him. It's a beautiful afternoon. This is a residential area. People are sitting on their porches enjoying the nice bright sunshine. It's like 10 minutes or 1 o'clock, 10 minutes after 1. When all of a sudden, back at the book depository, the police get everybody that works there, rounds them up, and the only one missing is Lee Harvey Oswald. So they put out an all-points bulletin. Be on the lookout for a man, 5'10", 140 pounds, white male, brown hair, all that. So there's a policeman who's patrolling out here in the Oak Cliff section. His name is Jefferson David Tippett. He's a Dallas policeman, and he sees a man, Oswald, walking the streets of Oak Cliff that we don't know, if we're assuming this way because he never lived to be able to tell it, that he must have thought Oswald matched the description of the all-points bulletin. So people saw this. He pulls over to the curb, and Oswald, he must have said, hey, stop, hey, I want to talk to you. So Oswald leans over in the passenger side window, and the police officer, they saw him put the car in park, and he opened the car door up and got out the driver's side, and he starts walking towards the sidewalk to talk to Oswald here. When all of a sudden, when he gets right here, Oswald pulls his pistol out and says, this is it, and he shoots the policeman 4 times and he goes down, and then, to make sure he was dead, people saw this, he went out and put a bullet in his head as he lay there on the street. Oswald then takes off running down the street. He rips his jacket off and throws it under a bush. He then takes out, he empties the pistol of his empty shell casings and throws them out on the street there, because they find all this later, and then reloads his pistol. He runs down to the commercial area where there's some stores in Oak Cliff, and a man named, I can't remember what his name is now, was running a Johnny Brewer. He ran a shoe store here in this area of Oak Cliff, and he was in there in his storefront window putting up displays when all of a sudden he sees Oswald duck into the storefront. And he notices, he says, oh man, that guy came off strange. He looks like he's running, and he's looking at the shoes that are for sale in the window. And then every time a siren went by, Oswald would look out, make sure the cop car, because people are on the down officer's phone calling headquarters saying, hey, we got a policeman dead down there, or we think he's dead in the street here at Oak Cliff. Cars are just, sirens are going off. Oswald ducks. When the police car goes by with the siren on, Lovelady, Johnny Brewer notices that Oswald looked out and then walked down the street. And when another siren came, Oswald ducked into another storefront. And he watches him. And he watches Oswald do this. He says, this guy's strange. And he sees him go into the Texas movie theater. It's called the Texas Theater. He sees him go in there. Okay? This is like, he shot Officer Tippett supposedly at 10 minutes after 1. This is probably 1:15. He's at the movie theater. Johnny Brewer walks down to the ticket lady and says, did that guy you just sell a ticket to come in the booth? He acting strange here. She said, I didn't sell him a ticket to anybody. He must have snuck in. So now they call the police. The police come and surround the Texas Theater. Okay? They surround the theater, and they're, of course, looking for the murderer of a police officer down the street here. This is Officer Nick McDonald. Oswald was sitting right in this seat right here, three in from the aisleway right here, okay, up near the back. Johnny Brewer met the police. They went in. They went down to where the screen was, where the movie was playing. They turned the movie off, and they said to Johnny Brewer, who's the man you saw? He said, that's him right up there, third row from the back, third seat in. So the policemen went up the aisles, and when they got to Oswald, he was sitting there. And as soon as Officer McDonald got to him, Oswald pulled his gun out and went to take a shot at Officer McDonald. But Officer McDonald grabbed his hand real fast, and when the hammer came down to release the Officer McDonald's finger or thumb got wedged between it, so it didn't fire. And then Oswald's punching him, and he's punching Oswald, and then other policemen come, and they subdue Oswald. They now take him down. This is them taking him out of the movie theater. Okay? They're going to put him in a police car, and they're going to take him down to police headquarters now. Meanwhile, back at the book depository, the policemen find a rifle. This is Detective Day leaving the book depository with Oswald's rifle. Another angle of what you can see. Oswald bought this rifle for $12.95. It was an Italian Mannlicher Carcano. It was a World War II surplus weapon that the Italians made that they never used, and they sold them in the United States through sporting goods stores and stuff. And Oswald bought this through a mail order catalog place up in Chicago. Here's the gun in headquarters, giving the press and everybody a chance to photograph it. This is the murder weapon they believe. They find this paper bag here that they, near where the window was, where Oswald was, the sniper's nest, and what they surmised was Oswald had brought the rifle to work that day, wrapped up in this paper bag that he made by materials at the place where he worked. Again, there's a lot more to go into with this because Oswald and his wife were separated, and she was living in Fort Worth with a lady friend of hers with his kids. He had 2 kids, and Oswald showed up on a Thursday night when he usually came on a Friday night after work and spent the weekend with his wife to see his kids. They weren't getting along. That's why he had his own place down in Oak Cliff in Dallas. And every morning on the weekends, on Monday, on Friday night, one of the co-workers in the building, Wesley Frazier, would take Oswald out to stay with his wife and kids. And then Oswald would, Monday morning, be waiting for Wesley Frazier, and they would ride to work together to the book depository. Oswald got his job at the book depository 6 weeks before the assassination because the lady that his wife was living with, Oswald didn't have a job and he needed work. She talked to Wesley Frazier, her neighbor, and said, are there any job positions down where you work? And he said, I'll check on it. Sure enough, there was, and they hired us. Okay? On the night, Thursday night, November 21st, Oswald goes to Wesley Frazier on Thursday during work, says, hey Wesley, I need to ride out to Fort Worth today, back to my wife's. He says, what do you mean? He says, this is Thursday, Lee, it's not Friday. He says, I know, I got to go out there and get curtain rods. I want to put some curtains up in my apartment that I'm renting. So the Oswalds had all of their belongings stored in this Ruth Payne, the lady that Mrs. Oswald and the kids were living, they had them in their garage. So Wesley was interrogated by the Warren Commission police. They said, well, what? He didn't have any paper. He had nothing. This thing is too big to put in your pocket to fold it up or anything to conceal it from. He said he had nothing when he left work. I took him. He got my truck. We rode out there. I dropped him off with his wife and the kids. And the next morning, I picked him up and he had this brown package. Okay? And he says that he got in the car and he put the brown package in the back seat of the truck and says, Lee, what's that? It's curtain rods. Don't you remember? Oh, yeah, curtain rods. So when they asked Wesley, well, how long, when they disassembled the rifle and put it in this bag, they did a measurement of how long it would be and how short and how tall the package would be. And they measured it and everything. And then, of course, Oswald, they measured his armpit to the cuff of his hand. And Wesley Frazier said, well, when you got to the book depository, how did he carry the package? Well, he put the top of the package in his armpit and cuffed it on the bottom, and he walked into work that morning. But the people that were in work never saw this, and Wesley Frazier was parking the car in the parking lot behind the big fence. When they measured Oswald's length of his armpit to the cuff of his hand, it was such and such an amount of inches where, and when they disassembled the rifle, it would have never fit the way Wesley Frazier said he carried the package. Now, they never did find curtain rods in the book depository. Okay? Whether they looked for them or not, we don't know. But according to Wesley Frazier, and he was, really put on the spot because he stuck to his story and told it. They said, hey, I'm telling you, this is all along the package was. I saw it. It was this. So, again, more mysteries. This is just evidence they collected on the 6th floor. They thought Oswald had ate his lunch and waited for the president to come and shoot him. This was James Jarman's lunch in the window right next to him. They found the bag of chicken bones and the Dr. Pepper bottle. Down on the street, policemen, agents, of course they got this whole area shut off now. They're looking, and this man here, who to this day, nobody knows who he is, supposedly found a shell in the grass there, or a piece of a bullet. Backseat of the president's car, when they get him to the hospital, his heart is still beating. His heart, he has a pulse. Okay? If this was in color, of course, that's all blood and everything. This is where Mrs. Kennedy would have been sitting, and then she cradled her husband and left. When they got there, she wouldn't let the doctors or anybody take him out of the car because of how disfigured his head was and stuff. So Agent Hill, who jumped in the seat with her, took off his sport coat and they laid it over President Kennedy's head so that none of the reporters or anybody could see it because Mrs. Kennedy wasn't going to let him take. She had his head covered in her arms and her lap. And that's the only reason she let him out. These are inside the presidential limousine. These are cracks in the windshield and in the chrome that weren't there before, that were either caused, the crack in the windshield and here in the chrome, either by bullet fragments that shattered his head or pieces of skull. These are bullet fragments they found in the limousine. Kennedy, like I said, his heart was still beating, but there was no real hope for him. Even with today's medicine, the wound to his head, he wouldn't have. No one can survive that. Unless God wills it. But this is Kennedy now is pronounced dead, and so now they're taking him out of the emergency trauma room, and they are going to clean his body up and put him in a casket that a funeral home in Dallas provided, and then they're going to take him back to Air Force One at the airport in Dallas left field, and here they are, his some agents and some of Kennedy's friends and things that were with him on the trip. taken him up the steps of Air Force One to place him in the back to take him to back to Washington. Mrs. Kennedy, it's too bright in here. You can see she'll wear this suit for a day and a half, and everybody's like, Mrs. Kennedy, come on, let's leave when she got on the plane. Come back here, let's clean you up. You know, she's covered in blood or sod. No, I want everybody to see what they did to Jack. Famous scene on board Air Force One, they secretly got President Johnson out of Parkland, where he was when he found out President Kennedy's dead. They got him back to Air Force One. They told him, let's get back to Washington. He said, no. I'm not leaving until Mrs. Kennedy is on board. And they said, well, she's not leaving until her husband's on board. Well, and we're waiting. So they waited. And then at 20 minutes after 2 that afternoon, President Johnson is sworn in as the 36th president before the plane takes off to go back to Washington. In Washington, they landed Andrews Air Force Base, and there's an ambulance waiting to take the body of the president to a naval hospital in Bethesda, Maryland, and that is where they will do the autopsy on the president, find out how many shots hit him, trajectory of the shots. And this is a diagram showing, now, since I made these clear back when I was an undergrad at Kent in 1978. Since this, the regular autopsy pictures have come out. But the pictures show where the bullet, this is the bullet hole that supposedly the bullet hit him in his back, then came out his throat and then went into the gut. This is President Kennedy's jacket he was wearing, and if you see the hole, you see where the shoulders are, the hole in the jacket is 6 inches down from, the base of his neck, and that's why there's been so much discrepancy on the angles and trajectories of bullets, because his clothing, it doesn't match up with the autopsy photograph. So the theory is that when Kennedy sat in the limousine in the backseat, his clothes got hunched up, and that there was, gaps in his thing. But if you look at the pictures right before he shot, his jacket's not hunched up. Plus his shirt, the hole in his shirt where it entered his back, and the jacket match up perfectly. This is the shirt the president was wearing, okay? And you can see from the top of the collar here where his neck, base of his neck was, it's down here where the picture shows that it's up here. Again, Gerald Ford, like I told you, we found out many years that he moved the hole. This is the tie he was wearing. When the bullet came out his throat, it nicked his tie and then went into the gut. This is the throat wound. Now, Kennedy had when the Dallas doctors first saw the president, when they brought him into the Parkland Hospital, his throat wound was a real little tiny hole about the size of an eraser on a pencil. They assumed Kennedy was shot in his throat from the front. What they did was, instead of making another wound in the president, they made slices on each side with a scalpel in the bullet hole, obliterating the wound, and putting a tube down, a tracheotomy incision, so to help President Kennedy. They're trying to save his life. Okay? This is a diagram again of where the shot supposedly entered the back of his head and then exited right here, knocking out that part of his skull. This is an X-ray of President Kennedy's skull. You can see here that it looks like this is his skull, that all this skull bone's missing. There's his eye sockets down here. Just looking straight on. You can see how it looks like so much of his brain's missing. His skull. After the autopsy, they take the president back to the White House. You can see Mrs. Kennedy. This is like 5:30 Saturday morning now, Washington time. Okay? Mrs. Kennedy, now Robert Kennedy, her brother-in-law, has joined her and and they're going to lay the president out in the East Room of the White House. And on the way back from Dallas with the body, Mrs. Kennedy wanted to put on a funeral that make something for the American people, an extraordinary funeral. She wanted to link history and as much. So what they did was they found out that in the archives, National Archives, that they actually had the bier that Abraham Lincoln laid out in the White House in the East Room on the same spot. So they brought the bier that Abraham Lincoln laid on and put that in the East Room where Lincoln was, and then put President Kennedy laid him out there. This is real early Saturday morning. Oswald, this is a lineup or his picture at the police station. Okay? You can see that he's got a bruise on his head, his eye. That's Officer McDonald, who he tried to shoot. Oswald being led to an interrogation room. He claimed that he never did it, and they said to him, well, why did you leave work if you didn't do it? He said, well, I didn't think there was going to be any more work that day, and so I just left and went home. Oswald denied everything. He denied that he took a rifle. He denied that that was his rifle. He denied that he shot the setting. They found out that he was married and has actually had a mother and he had a newborn baby and everything. And this is his wife Marina that they bring down to the police headquarters to question her. And she's the one that says, yeah, that's my husband. I took pictures with him and where we used to live in Dallas here in another area. And there's when he ordered the rifle, and there's the pistol, and he has communist literature. And this is in the backyard, and I took the pictures. That is his rifle. She identified. This is evidence they found. This is the brown paper bag, the empty shell casings, the pistol he shot the police officer with, his jacket. When they bring Oswald, the press want to see him. So Friday night, they bring him down, and they let the press, and they say, did you shoot the president? No, I haven't shot anybody, and I want a lawyer to come forward, and I need legal assistance and all this and that. And one of the reporters says, I understand that you used to be, or you're a member of that Free Cuba Committee. And all of a sudden, you can hear this on film. A voice in the back says, that's the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, corrected the reporter, naming the organization wrong. And that man was Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby's the guy in the black suit there with the dark glasses. He will be the one that's going to shoot Oswald on Sunday morning live on TV. This is Dallas Police Headquarters. This is the basement. There's two ramps. There's a ramp that comes out on Commerce Street and a ramp that comes out onto Elm Street. Sunday morning, they decided to move Oswald down to the county jail where it was more secure and tight. So, and there were phone calls coming in. He's going to be shot. He's going to be killed. Citizens are outraged at this and that. So they get all these security things. Sunday morning, live on television. I didn't see it. Okay, I was 6 years old, but I don't remember that. And they bring this car down, this police car down, and Oswald comes out of the police headquarters of the glass doors down here into the parking lot underneath, and all of a sudden Jack Ruby pops out in front of this CBS News reporter, has a gun in his hand, and he shoots Oswald live on television. Oswald goes down, still alive, gets him in the stomach. They now take Oswald, call an ambulance, rush Oswald down to Parkland Hospital. When he gets to Parkland, emergency nurses are in there, and when she hears, one nurse, Audrey Bell, hears that they're bringing Oswald, the alleged assassin of the president, that he's been shot, they try to take him in trauma room 1, the first one, and they said, nope. She said, you're not bringing him in here. He's not going to live or die in the room where the president was. So they took him, they worked on him, he's unconscious. What happened was he's bleeding internally, and they never could get the bleeding stopped. It the bullet went through like his spleen and hit an artery, and they never, and Oswald is dead. This is the man, Jack Ruby, that owned a strip club in Dallas called the Carousel Club. And again, there's a lot of stuff behind him. And this is Oswald on the autopsy table. You can see where they shot him, where Ruby shot him right there. That's the wound. And when they did the autopsy on him, that's how they found out. They put Oswald he didn't really have a funeral. They embalmed him at a funeral home. This is a picture of him in his casket. And at his funeral, he had no friends or anything, and nobody to carry his casket. This is his brother Robert and his mother Marguerite and her friend. That's his newborn baby, Rachel, that was just born like 3 weeks before the assassination. This is his daughter June, who was born. She was 3 years old, and this is his wife Marina. And they got these newspaper reporters and policemen to be pallbearers to carry the casket to his gravesite. His brother had to fight and for people to even give him a grave. Nobody even wanted to sell him a grave to put him in, because the assassin of our great president. Okay. What time is it? Are you guys bored now? What time is it, Chris? Oh, okay. I got just a funeral real quick here. I was going to have you guys fill something in, but Saturday afternoon at the White House. This is when it's like the East Room of the White House acted as the funeral home for the president, when all the foreign dignitaries and the heads of state and that all came and paid their respects to Mrs. Kennedy and the president. And then Mrs. Kennedy, of course, wanted the American people to be able to see. So, again, linking history with her husband, wanting to make sure everybody remembered John Kennedy and his legacy and all that. The funeral caisson, right here, that they used to carry Kennedy's body through Washington, D.C., they're going to take him down to the Capitol building, and he's going to lay in state in the rotunda of the Capitol. This is the same caisson that Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he died, that they carried him through the streets of Washington. Kennedy will be laid in state on Sunday all day, so that you and I could walk past his casket in the rotunda and see it. And I forget the number of people that just showed up and just lined up for hours and hours, and it was non-stop. People coming through to just walk past the casket of the president. Okay? The date of the funeral is Monday morning, National Day of Holiday. President Johnson declared everybody was off school. All the government, to see the chance. I actually remember watching the funeral, this on TV, black and white, of course, not color. It's just Robert Kennedy, the president's brother, Mrs. Kennedy, his other brother Ted Kennedy, brother-in-law Gene Smith, I can't remember his first name, and Sergeant Shriver, his other brother-in-law, President Johnson. They're leaving the White House now, and it's a 2-block walk to the church where they're going to have the funeral service for the president. This president's family, day of the funeral. The famous picture when they loaded the president's casket up at the White House and put it on the caisson to take it to the church. His little son, John Jr., whose birthday was that day, he turned 3 that day, he saluted his dad, and everybody cried and everything with that. He'd lost his father. Mrs. Kennedy said, nope, I'm not riding to the church, I'm walking. So all the dignitaries followed her, and they all walked behind the caisson and went to President Kennedy's funeral. After the funeral, they put him back on the caisson, and they're now taking him, and they're going to bury him over here on the hill in front of Robert E. Lee's mansion in Arlington Cemetery. Arlington Cemetery was started right after the Civil War. That was Robert E. Lee's plantation. And after the Civil War, because he sided with the South, we had all these dead Union soldiers coming back to Washington. Nobody was claiming them. We didn't know what to do. So one soldier, Sergeant Miggs, said, let's go over and bury him in Robert E. Lee's front yard. And when he comes back, he can see all the dead, death he caused. Well, Robert E. Lee never does go back, but it becomes a national cemetery. And Robert McNamara, who was one of John Kennedy's, his Secretary of Defense and one of his best friends in Washington, they had been to Arlington like 3 months before this on a nice day, and they'd actually stood right here. And Kennedy said to Robert McNamara, boy, wouldn't this be a great place? Look at that view to spend eternity right here. Robert McNamara told Mrs. Kennedy, I think I know where you can bury him. So they buried him right there. This is what it looked like in '63. There's a white picket fence around the gravesite, and they brought the president right up here, looking back to the other picture where we just came from. And, of course, Mrs. Kennedy and her brother-in-law, Robert Kennedy, lit the eternal flame. Now, since the gravesite has been done, this is Mrs. Kennedy day after the funeral coming back to the gravesite, what it looked like in 1963, November 25th. Okay? Any questions? Anything? Like I said, I taught a whole class at Beaver Local. I called it the 1960s, and I started in the 40s after World War II and the Cold War and how everything. You have to understand the times that the country was going through and the things that were going on, and there's so much. And I would spend 6 weeks just teaching the Kennedy assassination. go into Jack Ruby and Oswald's life and all the other things. So, you know, somebody asked me today, a professor down here, his name's Jack, he teaches sociology. Oh, who did it? Well, I couldn't really explain it or say who did it in, 2 minutes he had before he go to class. It was too much here. But what I believe, and let me tell you something real quick. The things that I have problems with, and everybody says, oh, you're just a big conspiracy freak. Kids that I had in school go, oh, that's that conspiracy. Now, I believe Oswald was involved, and I believe Oswald probably shot the president. Right? And my gut feeling is I think there was a lot more behind the scenes going on, and why he did it, and maybe a section. Why would there be a fake Secret Service agent up on the grassy knoll right after the assassination? Why is there a guy claiming we have no record of this guy? Why are many papers still classified top secret documents that have never been released? If Oswald did it by himself and acted alone, what's the mystery here? Why is there millions of documents still being covered up? Oswald was seen in the company of Cubans in Dallas. Oswald was seen with Cubans in New Orleans, actually got into fights with Cubans in New Orleans. Again, it's another little story. Oswald was supposedly in Mexico City visiting the Cuban embassy to get a visa to travel to Cuba to see Castro and tell him he wanted to fight for Castro on his side of his revolution down there, and they never gave it to him. At the same time Oswald was in Mexico City that the CIA was watching him, although they never had a picture of him, but they got pictures of everybody else going in and out. And they have tape recordings of supposedly Oswald talking in the Mexican or the Cuban embassy, but somehow that's not Oswald on the tapes. We know that now. At the same time in Dallas, 2 Cubans showed up at a Cuban exile. Her name was Sylvia Odio. Her parents were imprisoned by Castro in Cuba. They were still there, and she was trying to get her parents out of Cuba. One night at her apartment in September 1963, there's a knock on her door. She goes, and her sister and her answer the door, and here's 2 Cubans that introduce themselves as Leopoldo and Eduardo, and that they work for Alpha 66, this Cuban underground in the United States. And there's an American with them, and they introduce him as Leon Oswald. And Leon Oswald says, you Cubans got no guts. You should have shot Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs. And people said, Sylvia Odio, you're lying. You're lying. This can't be true. She said, I'm telling you, I know what I saw. When Oswald shot Kennedy 2 months later, he was on TV. Her and her sister went, oh my goodness, that was the guy that was here that night. So she went and told the police. They said, nah, he was in Mexico. No, he was here. Was there 2 Oswalds? One in Mexico pretending to be Oswald while the real Oswald was still in Dallas? Again, a whole bunch more branchings going on over there. Lyndon Johnson wrote a letter. He's got some documents sealed till 2038. Supposedly, he's going to blow the lid off this. Not to be open for 75 years after Kennedy's assassination, which makes it 2038. They found a recording of the assassination from one of the Dallas policemen on the motor. His microphone was stuck on, and everything that was all the sounds in Dealey Plaza that day were recorded in Dallas Police Headquarters on this old-fashioned recording device called a dictabell. When the House Select Committee on Assassinations was created in 75, they got a hold of this. They didn't know. They sent it to MIT, and these professors worked on it. They did this acoustical analysis, went to Dallas, shut off Dealey Plaza, put sandbags in the street, and put a guy up in the 6th floor window behind the grassy knoll, and they shot. And the acoustics matched perfectly that there was 4 shots they said they heard, and one of them came from the grassy knoll. The Warren Commission was never told when they investigated President Kennedy's assassination. They were never told by the CIA that there was a plan called Operation Mongoose to kill Castro. Some people believe Castro got Kennedy before Kennedy got Castro. The mob, that comes up a lot. The mob, Sam G. Kahn, Johnny Roselli, Carlos Marcello. Robert Kennedy was his brother's attorney general. He put more mafia figures behind bars and deported them than anybody in the history of our country. He was cracking down on the mob. And the mob felt they were double-crossed because supposedly the mob helped get John Kennedy elected in 1960. And he crossed it. Anti-Castro Cubans. Kennedy left them out to dry. The Bay of Pigs invasion. Called off the air support, called off the naval backup, said, nope, if this is going to happen, it's the American armed forces not to be involved. Well, the CIA forgot to tell the Cubans that and landed them there, and they got slaughtered by Castro. Are they coming back now and saying, we'll get that guy. He left us out to dry, we'll get him. Oswald was seen, last thing I'm going to say. In November of 1963, 3 weeks before the assassination, Oswald was seen on a street in Dallas with a CIA agent named David Atlee Phillips, who was a big CIA agent who was in charge of these Cuban exiles that started this group called Alpha 66. The man who was in charge of Alpha 66 was Antonio Vecchione. Antonio Vecchione was told to meet David Atlee Phillips in Dallas at a coffee shop. He shows up in Dallas, he's walking up the street, he sees David Atlee Phillips, his CIA contract handler. He says, hey, he says, hey, come here. I want to introduce you to somebody. This is Lee Oswald. Why is the CIA agent talking to Lee Oswald in Dallas? Antonio Vecchione. A few months later, in Miami, where he lived, after all this, somebody came up to his car and tried to kill him, put 2 bullets in his head, but he lived. He never spoke about it again. Like I said, there's so much, guys. Okay, does anybody have questions? Or I could babble on and on for another 5 hours. There's so much.
Please stay, and if you have questions, if you are a student in Professor Sullivan or Professor Sutton's class, please sign that. There's also flyers that have the dates and the topics for the rest of our speaker series. And again, thank you, Mike. Great presentation.
I was just talking a little bit, and now they're like, wow, it's so remarkable.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, no problem.
Oh,
Good job.
Like I said, I was scratching. We sit down and really talk about it. I talked to Pat Shem. Pat Shem was the only one I've ever met pretty good in Boston. I said to Pat Shem about it. He was the council on House Select. Pat's up. Kate Fawns wrote a book called The Last Investigation After the Select. When they got on this acoustic stuff, they started covering more. The government said, well, we're going to do more of that. It's not. He wrote a book called The Last Investigation After the House Select. He was a member of it. Tony told him with the CIA.
Yeah.
Here.
So what's your
I think that what happened was
He's talking about.
Helicopter always on screen.
I know exactly where it was.